Welcome, college baseball fans and especially ACC fans, as we begin our series of deep dive previews into regionals. Micah, you're shaking your head. What's going on?
You know, we're like the committee. We just don't communicate well. I thought I was opening, Monty. I'm glad that I didn't just start talking over you. Even you are smiling because you know that I was supposed to open, and yet you did it anyways. There's a natural habit. That's fine. It is what it is. But we're going to be previewing all the regionals. Obviously, Monty, we're going to kick it off with the greatest one of all time, the one that I'm going to be at, which makes it the best just because I'm going to be there. I mean, that's just the rules. I don't make the rules. Those just are the rules. But obviously,
You're
we got
not.
the Athens Regional. Tonight we're going to talk Athens, Clemson, Tallahassee, and why
Chapel
am I
Hill.
drawing a blank? What was the other one?
Chapel Hill.
Chapel Hill. Thank you. We'll obviously preview those four. We'll be doing them all throughout for all 8 ACC series. I don't want to speak for College Baseball Central, Monty, but will we cover all 16 of them?
I just want to make sure the ACC is covered. But
Fair enough.
For college baseball central, there'll be a preview for all uh, 16 regions on the website. I'm responsible, for example, for writing all the ACC ones and VCU, so that there'll be a nice in-depth piece on the website if there aren't other videos. But we're covering the ACC centric regions.
Yeah. So those of you that obviously are familiar with the fifth quarter ACC team, last year we released a 10-minute, 15-minute podcast of every single regional, just kind of giving you a little bit more of a deep dive on what to expect. So obviously we want to do the similar type of treatment this year with obviously the luxury of having Monty in the live stream and being able to put this on YouTube and not just be a audio format. So with that being said, Monty, let's just jump right into it. And the first talking point for me that I think is most important for those of you that might be subscribed to D1 Baseball, Monty, did you see their D1 Baseball Tournament roundtable article that came out today?
No.
So, long story short, I think it was 8 out of 10, or I can't remember the exact amount of people, but pretty much everybody except for two had the easiest regional for the host team being Athens. And I was intrigued by that because it obviously got my blood boiling a little bit because that's a shot at Georgia Tech. That's also a little bit of a shot at UNCW. Obviously, they preface that with all these regionals have their own flavor and their own difficult pieces to it. But it was very common theme that the Athens regional was the most beneficial for Georgia, which I fight back and say I would argue that Georgia Tech has one of the better regional hosts to be playing from a rivalry standpoint, from a team they've seen before standpoint, and obviously the ability for their fans to come. And again, the question marks behind Georgia and not necessarily their RPI kind of benefiting them more than maybe, let's say, we all kind of view Georgia as. So, Monty, first off, what is your opinion on that? Do you have opinion on where this regional kind of sits in the difficulty scale?
I started thinking about those, and you know what, I have no idea where they ultimately are because the NCAA tournament is a fickle mistress. We're going to sit here and talk about this as a favorable regional, and this weekend they get on the field and can prove us completely wrong. So I'm not going to speculate too much on that. I think it's disrespectful to Georgia Tech to do so. I think it's disrespectful. Is it UNC Wilmington? Is that the 2 seed?
Yep, that's 2 seed.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So it may be a little bit more favorable, but I'm going to try not to speculate on that because ultimately we're going to be surprised, I think, by some of those regionals that we think are relatively easy for a certain team.
Yeah, I think that's obviously important to talk about. So we're going to jump right in. What I did last year, Monty, and I think I'm going to keep the same at least for mine, is just go through each team quickly, kind of just give you some names to know, some things to know. Your dog's not really thrilled. They must be a Navy. Are you a Navy household, Monty? Because we're about to talk Army. So I don't know if the dogs are anti-Navy or what, or anti-Army, but
they're anti-American because they're Welsh.
Oh, that's what it is. Wow. So this is like the campaign all over again, huh? You didn't want to have those American dogs. Man, Monty hates America. But seriously, though, Army might have the best starting rotation in this regional from a standpoint of names to know, consistency. They have 3 guys that they kind of know who they are. So I want to just make sure again that I'm not messing anything up. I took a lot of notes on this, Monty. We've got Justin Lehman. He's got a 2.53 ERA on the year. Matthew Ronbaum, he's got a 3.91 ERA. And Mike Ruggeri, I think I'm probably botching that. Italian names get me every time. He's got a 5.21 ERA, as well as Steven Graver, who has an opportunity as well. It's kind of a fourth option for them if they were to get to that point. So, Army feels pretty comfortable about their rotation. They have some really solid senior leadership. They've been around a decent amount, right? They've won the Patriot League, I think 6 years in a row now, is it? And so this is not a new stage for them. Last year we talked a lot about it, and Monty, you were in Charlottesville too. You saw Sam Ruda, and what he can do for this Army team. They've also got Derek Berg, their catcher, who has over 1,000 OPS. They have some dudes on this team that can play ball. Obviously they're the 4 seed. They're going to be the underdog coming into this. But I want to make sure people understand that this Army team can play.
Yeah, they can play. They've earned that spot for a reason, and underestimate them at your own peril. They can be a pesky team, and that's exactly what they're looking to come in here and beat.
Yeah, and I think too, I'm really excited to see kind of the matchups that kind of comes with this, because obviously the strategic plan of Georgia. But again, Army is going to present some difficulty there. We move on. We're gonna do order of seeds. We'll do Georgia Tech here. Obviously, they're the 3 seed. We kind of know what to expect. We got Drew Burris, got Matthew Ellis. You've got a lineup from top to bottom. This is probably the most sound defensive team in this regional. They don't commit a lot of errors. They're very sound up the middle with Bichetti and Peyton Green. Obviously, Drew Burris in center obviously is a nice piece to have too. With I think he set like a school record or something like that for outfield assists. I'm trying to remember what the I took a note of this somewhere. I was digging through their guides. Where was it here? Yep, school record for outfield assists in one season. Drew Burris did that this year for Georgia Tech. So they're feeling pretty good about obviously what they can bring defensively. There's some question marks on the pitching side. We saw Aiden Finateri get roughed up by Virginia. That is probably going to be their game 1 guy, I would assume. Obviously, Cam Jones, the 2-way guy, he's looked pretty good in his outings. I think it's a solid option to have in either the elimination game or the 1-0 game. Hopefully, obviously, the 1-0 game for us here in the ACC world. But, this team can hit. This lineup is obviously stacked. I think they're the most balanced lineup in this regional as well. So definitely something to kind of keep an eye on for Georgia Tech. The one team I really want to talk about most is UNC Wilmington, Monty. I got to see them against NC State in the midweek, and I'm so glad I did, because they are a fun team to watch. They've got guys all around. Arguably the best defensive players at third base for the Seahawks, and that's Jack Kroom. He has a fantastic fielding percentage. He's pretty sound offensively as well. He's a 5th-year senior, really kind of anchors that hot corner there for the Seahawks. And then arguably the best starting pitcher too, with RJ Sales. Between him or Colton Smith for Georgia, which we'll talk about, but he's got a 3.37 ERA. His opponent batting average is .208. He's got 81 strikeouts and 82 and 2/3 innings. He has a 36% whiff rate, which is obviously insane. This is going to be a fun matchup from the standpoint of that Georgia Tech lineup versus RJ Sales on Friday night. I really, really like what UNCW does. They also have, in my opinion, the best bullpen here. They've been consistent all year. Luke Craig has been great with his 2.24 ERA. They also have guys like Trace Baker, Ryan Calvert, and Case Strope, I can't remember exactly how to pronounce that, who have all been very solid with multiple innings on the year. You're going to have to get on them early, because this UNCW team is capable of obviously scoring, but they're not the offensive juggernauts that Georgia Tech and Georgia are going to be in this one. And then obviously, too, we're going to transition to the host seed, the Georgia Bulldogs. I mean, Charlie Condon. I feel bad for Drew Burris, because when you have numbers like Drew Burris, you're probably the best player in your state 98% of the time, and it's clear cut. And it's not clear cut who the best player in the state of Georgia is. Depending on who you ask, I lean Drew Burris, but depending on who you ask, it's Drew Burress or Charlie Condon, right? Right, Monty? You're giving me a face like I'm crazy.
I think you're crazy. Charlie Condon is like 2 WAR better than Drew Burress. It's not close.
No, it's fair. I think part of that comes down to also Georgia Tech's lineup's a little more deep in my opinion, but no, that's fair. Again, we're an ACC podcast, Monty. I want to defend our guy Drew Burress, but Charlie Condon, yeah, I mean, he is what he is, which is arguably the best player in college baseball, right? I mean, is that incorrect, Monty, or am I going too far again and now being too high on him? But their lineup obviously is stacked with Corey Collins, Trey Phelps, Paul Totes. Again, don't watch enough Georgia to pretend like I know how to pronounce that. Slade Alford, Dylan Goldstein, and Colby Branch. All are guys that make their lineup go. Obviously, selfishly, Monty, I really want to see a 1-0 matchup between Georgia and Georgia Tech.
I hate to put this out. You said that you just said Georgia Tech's lineup might be a little bit deeper, and then you listed all these great players for Georgia. So, just want to.
Did you want me to list every Georgia Tech player? I mean, we've talked.
I could list every single Georgia Tech player onto the bench. Doesn't necessarily mean they're better, but
I'd like Georgia Tech's lineup better, personally. Again, that everyone's entitled to their own opinion. I mean,
I'm not necessarily disagreeing. I think they're comparable enough that
yeah. No, absolutely. Again, and I mean, Monty, again, this is where the way I did it last year compared to how you see this vision. Last year, I spent more time talking about the other teams because we do enough talking about Georgia Tech on our show consistently that this is obviously tailored for the ACC folks that don't necessarily know about a bunch about Georgia, UNCW, and Army. So again, we're trying to keep it short too, so I don't want to list every team's lineup because I pulled all the stats. I mean, I can tell you who the Chris Barr is hitting 329 with a 447 slugging percentage for Army. I can go up and down the lineup if we want to, but at the end of the day, right, Monty, this is going to be a regional. It's going to come down to really who can pitch the best, in my opinion, because I think these offenses all can score in their own ways. So, I mean, Monty, what would you say is the key here for? I mean, if you want to look at the Georgia Tech route or just whoever, like, what would be the key to win this regional in general for any of these teams?
Pitching. I mean, I think Georgia Tech pitching needs to show up, right?
Yeah.
If they want to win, obviously UNC has a great. They might have the best pitcher and the best bullpen, like you just said. Army might have the in terms of numbers, the most consistent rotation. I think Georgia Tech, from an ACC pit standpoint, might be in a little bit of trouble based on they're really going to have to depend on their offense. And same with Georgia. Once you get past Colton Smith, unless Leighton Finley has can produce something as well for them. So. I think UNCW is being overlooked a little bit with what they can do from the mound.
Yeah, and I think what I'm most intrigued about. That's now my dog's got an itch, so that's great background noise.
Indeed.
Yeah, and she doesn't want to stop. Goodness gracious! So happens when you're the only one home, so there's no other place to really have the dog. But last year we saw Army obviously in the Charlottesville Regional. They kind of came in with similar situations. A lineup that was pretty deep offensively. The numbers looked fantastic. A pretty solid rotation, right? One that we thought could be, pretty dangerous as a 4 seed. And then Virginia just ran them out of the gym. And so did Oklahoma for the most part as well. So I'm curious if that happens again because Georgia's lineup, Monty, here's a better question. Which lineup was better last year? Georgia's lineup or Georgia's lineup this year or Virginia's lineup last year?
Yeah, I think Virginia's lineup last year.
Okay. I think that's fair. I think Georgia has probably the best single guy in the lineup, but maybe from top to bottom, right? That Virginia lineup was phenomenal. But it'll be interesting to see, how Army does in game 1. I like that Georgia I'm guessing opted to do the early game against Army. I'm pretty sure that's how that works.
I'm pretty sure that the 1 seed or the host gets to pick that because I know that's what happens with Virginia often.
Yeah, so obviously I liked that layout, but I mean, this is going to be a very fun regional. I know they're saying there's a good regional D1 baseball, I should say. They're saying it's a pretty, favorable regional for Georgia, and there's definitely an argument to that, right? I mean, UNC Wilmington, question mark on whether or not they should have been a 2 seed. Obviously, there's also this is the only regional that features 2 teams with less than 31 wins, which is obviously something of note, just because we've talked about it in some of these regionals when we did our show yesterday, the amount of wins like a Stetson has, right, where they're looking at 40 wins, and we're talking about 2 teams in this regional with not even more than 31. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. I cannot wait to be there, Monty. I've still not heard back about a credential, but I'm assuming that probably comes, tomorrow. I'm hoping, but very, very excited to be there, and obviously giving coverage throughout the weekend. But yeah, that's all I've got, Monty. Anything you want to wrap this up? Do we want to? I didn't predict last year, but we can predict. I mean, I know we kind of did it on our show last night, but I'm happy to do a prediction again if you think it's worth it.
Yeah, it's up to you. This is your show. I'm just here for the ride.
Yeah, but you're going to be on shows that I'm not on. This is going to be a joint show, so you're going to be on all of them.
Right, that's true. I'm just gonna do my best Micah impression.
It's impossible. No one can be like me. Well, then, Monty, I will go ahead and I will do my. I'm gonna go 1 through 4, aka how I see them finishing. I think Army, unfortunately, will be our 0-2 team. I'm gonna do it, Monty. Georgia Tech, they're gonna go 1-2. They're gonna get 1 somewhere, but it might just be Army. I have UNC Wilmington winning this regional, though. Not that I don't believe in Georgia. I think this UNC Wilmington team is special. And I also think, too, Monty, there's a little bit of a chip on the shoulder of the Seahawks because of the disrespect the CAA received as well, with obviously Charleston being left out, Northeastern being left out. They basically told UNCW this weekend, Monty, that if they didn't win the conference tournament, they were probably out. And I don't know how, but I feel like Coach Hood over there in Wilmington is going to kind of remind his guys kind of what they're representing besides just the university and themselves. So I'm going to lean the Seahawks to win this regional. Again, I like their bullpen, and I think their lineup's sneaky good.
Yeah, I'm going to go Georgia Tech at 1. I'm going to go Georgia at 2, UNCW at 3, and Army at 4.
So we hate the troops, but I'm very, very excited, Monty, to be there. And yeah, I mean that's all I've got. We're going to be doing more live shows, obviously. We're going to do one here shortly. I'm going to have 5th quarter Coastal Carolina, my guy Hayden, on to talk the Clemson Regional. And yeah, that wraps up the Athens Regional. Obviously, let us know what you think, your predictions in the comments. And feel free to DM me when I'm wrong. I can't wait to make the graphic. Monty, I'll talk to you off air, but I'm going to make a full graphic for the whole regionals where everyone picks their 1 through 4 for every regional for fun. So for funsies. So that's all I've got, Monty. Thank you for producing this show and being on it with me. Obviously, can't wait to feel the buzz in Athens this weekend.
Bzz, bzz.